Hi, my name's Phil. I give the tours around here. I also do the murder mysteries, so I'm a professional murderer, and I decorate for Halloween too. So that's Pierre. He's a good guy. Anyway, welcome to Bube'S Brewery. This is the oldest still standing pre-prohibition brewery in the country. You might have heard of a little place called Yuengling that is the oldest brewery in America. That is technically true. Their business is older than ours, but they no longer brew out of their original building. Their original building burnt down, and they moved into another one that they modernized a lot, which they have to because it's a very large operation over there. We didn't. We're still the oldest still standing 1800s brewery in America. We're on the National Registry of Historic Places, not once, but twice. Once for the brewery that was built in 1858, and once for the hotel, which we still rent out, that was built in 1879. We can doubly never be torn down, and the ghosts love it. So, I'm going to show you all around, so we're going to go over this way. This is what's called the shaft room. If you look down here, the purpose of this room was the last step in the brewing process. This is kind of like a giant dumbwaiter. Every morning they would put empty barrels here and they would lower them down with a pulley system. They would fill them up with the stores down there, pulley them back up, and then that wall used to not exist. They used to back up the horses and load up horse-drawn trucks for delivery. Back then it was very common for all breweries to have beautiful, ornate, painted delivery trucks that the purpose of it was, of course, to deliver the beer, but also to be a big moving billboard, a big advertisement, that everybody be happy when the adult equivalent of the ice cream truck would come around. Similar to like the Clydesdales, the Budweiser Clydesdales, but all little breweries have those too. And here's a fun little, here's a tavern license from 1883. Not even close to the oldest piece of paper that we still have, because all of the beer that we have here, all the beer that we make and sell, we still sell it legally in the year 2023 because of a very old piece of paper that we still retain and operate under. We still operate under our original liquor license, our beer and liquor license from the 1800s. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, then I'll show you the barrels. This is the barrel room, or the stock tub cellar. These are all original barrels from the 1800s. Each one of these can hold 5,000 gallons of German lager. They're white oak, and they were built in place in what is now the beer garden, and then disassembled and brought in here piece by piece and reassembled like a giant beer IKEA. And they have stayed here ever since because nobody wants to move them. For what they are remarkably well intact for what they are. There aren't many examples of barrels like these intact, especially in America. They look a little rough because they're from the 1800s, but they're in such good condition that we have been told that we could potentially disassemble these, clean the wood, re-soak it, rebind it, and brew beer exactly the same way that they did back in the 1800s. So I think that's pretty cool. If you want to see, all of them have a porthole on them like this. You can see some of the tools that the cooper used. Mr. Bube employed a fella called a cooper. His name was not Cooper, his job title was cooper. And a cooper's job is to build and maintain barrels, which is a pretty important job, pretty important person to hire if you're running a brewery in the 1800s. You can see the metal bow tie looking thing at the top of that barrel. that is how they would tighten or release the tension on these gigantic barrels, because all of these would be under a tremendous amount of pressure when they were in use. They would bulge out. You can see where some of the bands have fallen over time, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's just from gravity, but that's true, but also more specifically because when these were in use, they would be bulged out from having 5,000 gallons of beer in them, plus all the pressure of the fermenting, that much liquid that's fermenting would create a lot of gas coming off of it. So they would only fill these up a third of the way full. The other 2/3 were left empty for all of that expanding gas of the fermenting liquid. So if you got this whole operation wrong, these things could explode. And the cooper's job of keeping these bands really tight was a very important and daily job, because again, no electricity, no air conditioning. You know, say it's February and it's one of those weeks where the beginning of the week it's 30 degrees and the end of the week it's 5. So this wood would warp, similar to an old door in a house. So he had to make sure that these bands were tight enough that they were airtight, that there was no liquid coming out, but they weren't so tight that it was cracking. And then you had a 5,000 gallon beer flood on your hands. We've had brewers from all around the world, specifically German brewers, who come to study these barrels because there are not many examples of them left anymore. Back then, they didn't have the presence of mind to think that these would be worth anything in the future. This was just factory equipment. When they were done with it, they would have just thrown this out. They would have burned it. But because of the weird history and the way that this building was left standing for a long time, we retained these things. We held on to them until they were cool again, and we're happy that they do. We're happy that we did, because they're a pretty unique, cool part of American history. Watch your step right here. There's my friend, don't worry about him. It's part of Halloween. Usually this is the art gallery, but the artist actually just took her art out, but it's going to be used as one of the rooms. Usually it's a more interesting room, but it's in between stuff because it's got to be filled with my friends here. So here's Mr. Alois Bube, and tell you a little about him and a little about the history of beer and how important German immigrants were to making beer in America. So, long time ago, there used to be little breweries in every town and city. Like a butcher shop or a bakery, there'd be a little brewery, and they would make a small batch just based on what they grew on their own land. They wouldn't really name it either. They didn't come up with funky, crazy names like, you know, Space Monkey, Golden Banana stuff. They just called it the beer. It was just the house beer. And they would grow their little amount and make it, and then that was all they had. My generation likes to think that we invented microbreweries, but we sort of rediscovered it. So along came this guy, Philip Frank, who was a malt baron. He made malt and then sold it to all the little breweries and got pretty rich from that and decided to make his own mega brewery. He started he made this as the foundation of what would become the large, you know, nationwide breweries that we have today. And there was a brew rush in the 1800s, like a gold rush, where word got back to Germany and all these German citizens were like, go, the Americans, they love our beer, they can't get enough of it, go and make a fortune. So a lot of German citizens came over, people who you're probably familiar with, Budweiser, Yingling, Coors, sorry, Adolf Coors was his name, Bush, like all of those were German citizens, and Mr. Bube was just one of them. Those were his contemporaries. He was working at the same time. So part of the reason why he never went national like a lot of those other guys might have had something to do with the fact that he was dead. He died kind of suddenly and tragically at age 57 in 1908, which even in 1908 was too young to die. and no one saw it coming. He wasn't, you know, given like a 5 years to live or something. He just dropped dead. And it was very sad for the family, and it was also crippled the business because at that point, he was the only one who knew really the specifics of making the beer, the real craft of it. And like I said before, if you got it wrong, you have a 5,000 gallon bomb on your hands. And if he had had the time, if he knew that he was going to die, he could have had someone shadowing him and learning the craft of it, but he didn't. So all of his knowledge just left with him. This place kept running for a while. Eventually, the family was living here for a while, but eventually it fell into disrepair. It was abandoned for a good amount of time until the current owners saw an opportunity here to restore it and keep it alive and keep it functioning the way that it was meant to, and keeping a big part of American history alive. So the cool thing, and the way that the owner likes to say it, he likes to call it a living museum, where he said, I could have just opened this place and sold tickets like a museum and had people walk through and go, neat, and then leave. But we're actually using this place as it was intended. This place has always been, at its peak, a brewery, a bar, a restaurant, and a hotel. And we're very proud that in the year 2023, it is still a brewery, a bar, a restaurant, and a hotel. We just have Wi-Fi now, is the biggest difference. Up here, take you this way. Shots in here. All right, take you down to the catacombs. This is a good shot here. Watch your step because it's all kind of uneven floors as we go. These are the shaving casks, sometimes also called chip barrels, because the wood, as you probably know, is so important to the taste that they would actually add additional wood shavings or wood chips to these barrels, depending on what sort of beer they were making. So, the coolest way to explain what you're standing in is that you're standing in ancient technology right now. Nobody builds any places like this anymore because we don't need to, because we have refrigeration. But before electricity, people have known for a very long time that if you dig deep enough into the ground, or if you're lucky enough to find a naturally occurring cave system like this was, you can carve it out and create a place that is reliably cool all year round. There'll be people who are on the tour who will, they'll get down here on a hot summer, especially in summer. You could feel the difference. They'll get down here and like, oh, it's nice and cool. And there's a guy who's like, what does it feel like in the winter? And I'm like this. It feels exactly like this. That's the point. It's always around 54 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on how many bodies are in the room. depending if there's candles going. Typically around 54 degrees. We do temperature control it now to make it a little warmer than that. It actually would be colder because we do fine dining down here. And this place was never intended for fine dining, but it turns out, just weird, lucky way of things, it turns out that it's perfect for fine dining because, as it happens, cell phones don't work very well through 43 feet of rock. So this place is perfect for nice, quiet dining where cell phones aren't going off. It's when the lights are lower, it's candle lit. Turned out to be a good way of using it because we don't store the beer here anymore. A lot of people have big imaginations. They're like, "Are these full of beer?" I'm like, "No, they're full of cobwebs right now, but we still keep them because they look amazing." Here's one of our ghosts. This place is very haunted. We use him for TikToks and stuff for advertising. Okay, we can go back up this way. And we're back at the beginning. Cool sign over here. That one's a new old thing. I don't know if you have any interest in this, but this place was the first place in Mountjoy to have electricity. And this is our steam-powered generator. Every now and then I have a tour where someone is an engineer, they work with big machinery, and they absolutely geek out about this thing. They'll be like, "Oh, it's intact!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know what it is." But apparently they were very wealthy, this place, and as a brewery and a hotel in a big massive building, they required a lot of electricity, and so they were the first ones to get it in this area. It's been said that they generated so much that they actually gave some to the city of Mountjoy. I don't know if that's exactly true or not, but if it is, it sets me up for a good joke, which is that this place was getting people lit. So, watch your step on these. Sometimes those can be slippery. All right, I'm typically black if you want to play white, so it just goes well with my outfit. So we have we have like events out here and weddings, all sorts of things. This used to be the livery where they would keep the horses and the pigs. We don't do that anymore. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, especially in the summer. It's really nice to sit out here and have a beer. Yeah, I guess the last little bit, I guess I could say, is what I already sort of said before. Like, I love working here because it's not just working at any old little bar. You know, this is a piece of history, a piece of American history, and I just love the fact that we're still using it exactly the way that it was intended to be used in the 1800s. So, yeah, come check us out.
Where can people find you?
Oh, we're in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania, and you can find us on Facebook and on Instagram and on our website, bube'sbrewery.com. Just be careful how you spell Bube's, how you type that into Google. It's Bubes. Yeah.